over a decade since we got another film in the Shrek universe, whether it's Puss in Boots, Shrek, but this week we have Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I never thought we'd get a Puss in Boots sequel. I never thought they would actually choose to do this instead of a Shrek movie, but I'm very excited to be ranking all 6 Shrek movies from worst to best, and I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section, so hit that like and subscribe button, comment down below your guys' thoughts, and without further ado, let's get into this ranking right now. I just got done rewatching all these, and I was actually kind of surprised to see where some of my rankings decided to go. I've seen each of these movies at least twice or more, because some of these have obviously been around forever, and at my number 6, it is Shrek the Third. Now, as a child, I actually really enjoyed this movie. This was one of the ones that I rewatched the most, this and the second film, and I was kind of, every time I hear someone talk about Shrek the Third, they say it's a terrible film, so I've actually put off watching this since I was a kid. I have not wanted to rewatch this because I was honestly and genuinely afraid I was not going to like it anymore. And now that you've seen it in my last place, I don't really like or adore this film as much. There are some fun gags in here for sure, and I will never go against that. I think one of the best gags is when Fiona's trying to yell to Shrek to tell him that she's pregnant, and Puss in Boots says some funny lines, and Donkey says some funny lines, and there's some great elements in there, and I do love how each Shrek film has dealt with some big thematical swings. This movie deals with fatherhood and becoming a father, and how do you feel like that's going to shape up to be when you really don't think or maybe had a great past with your own father. But they don't dive into it enough, and they end up repeating the same storyline we have seen Shrek go through thousands of times before, whether in the first movie, the second movie, and I genuinely thought that was kind of annoying. And watching this movie again now as an adult, I can see that. I think there's some fun moments to it all, and I think bringing King Arthur and Merlin in has some good tidbits to it, specifically when all of them start switching bodies and it's Puss in Boots and Donkey that switch bodies. That was funny. Also seeing Shrek have to come over and become the king and be someone that he's not going to be is also, again, genuinely funny. But again, it's a repetitive movie that you feel like you've seen before. It's trying to continue off the second film, bring back Prince Charming, but again, Prince Charming was done in the second movie, and they try to do more with him, and it just doesn't feel gratifying. And every time before this, I used to watch this movie as a kid, I used to love this film. After this rewatch, I don't know if I'm going to watch this one for a while. At my number 5 now, we have Puss in Boots 1. Now, this movie I was genuinely really excited for as a kid, and the reason I say this is because Puss in Boots is my favorite character in the entire Shrek franchise, and watching this spinoff, there's a couple thoughts that come to mind. 1, it's not bad. It's actually quite good. 2, the reason that it's not too up higher on this list is because the Shrek franchise is just genuinely a really good franchise. And 3, this movie does feel a little bit too long, and specifically, it does feel like a short story that could have been told in about 30 minutes, but instead they tell it in like an hour and 25-minute runtime. And again, that's not a bad thing for kids, but as adults, when you watch this movie, there's not enough material there for me personally. And when I go back and rewatch it, I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, there's some good elements in here, but nothing that I would want for my own Puss in Boots adventure. And I find this one to actually be, while Shrek the Third I can remember a little bit more of, Puss in Boots I find to be probably the most forgettable of all the Shrek movies itself. We're at my number 4, and my number 4 is Shrek Forever After. Now, when I say this, I used to genuinely not like this movie as a kid. Actually, as a child, this was the movie that I never rewatched. I'd only seen it once up to this point, did the rewatch, and I went, okay, this is actually pretty good. Like, I'm not going to lie, this is a pretty good sequel. Is it a great closing chapter to Shrek? No, I still think there's enough open for them to continue this franchise whenever they want to, and there is rumors that they actually are working on a Shrek 6 or a Shrek 5 or whatever the hell they want to call it, but I hope that's true, and I hope it's actually good. But Shrek Forever After is a fine movie. It's one that has a lot of fun in it, and specifically having Shrek take his wish, and again, putting to the side again that it deals with a thematical avenue that Shrek's already gone through, and now he just wants, I want everything to go away. And he learns very fast that not everything is the same with if he decided not to do all the choices that he did, and I genuinely do like that. But for me, the fun aspect is actually seeing all the changes. Seeing Puss in Boots is now chunky, fat, sleepy cat. And then you see Donkey and him were never really friends. And then you go to Fiona and how she's kind of the warrior of all the ogres. And even Rumpelstiltskin in here looks like a crack addict, where we see him in Shrek the Third and he's like normal. So what happened there? I don't know. I just know watching this movie, I found it to be more fun than I imagined. And it was more fun than I originally conceived, because I actually thought I was going to be in the minority of most people and say Shrek the Third is actually the better one. Shrek Forever After is the terrible one. Shrek Forever After is actually an underrated little gem that I think is fun. It's not one of the best DreamWorks movies, but it is a fun movie at that. And Shrek the Third is garbage, or not garbage, I guess that's a strong word, but mediocre at best. But I watched Shrek Forever After, and I was actually quite surprised. I want another Shrek movie, and I want one that continues the lore in a little bit of a better way. My number 3, I went back and forth on this one quite a bit, and I'm not ready to say that this is a better movie than the second, or my number 2, but I will say right now, my number 3 is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and I think this movie is perfect. Like, 1, 2, and 3 are perfect movies on this list, and I found that the Puss in Boots 2 was incredible. It's one of the biggest surprises of the year, because first off, I thought it was going to be a direct-to-home movie. It's not. It's going to theaters. Thought that was going to be stupid. But go ahead and watch the movie, and I'm like, okay, no, actually, this movie is incredible, and I've seen it twice, and I can't wait to see it a third time, because Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is awesome. Like, in almost every department that you could have ever fathomably imagined, this is an awesome movie. Not just from the animation and the way that they decide to do it in this fairy tale type of style from Spider-Verse. There's a lot of cool elements there. But the thematics of seeing Puss in Boots deal with death, life, and your legacy and what you're supposed to do is actually probably and arguably the most deep thing that Shrek and the entire Shrek franchise has ever dealt with. And I will also go as far to say this is probably one of the best things that DreamWorks has done since Kung Fu Panda 2 or How to Train Your Dragon 2. Now, I'm not a huge fan of How to Train Your Dragon 2. Spite me in the comments. It's not my favorite one. I enjoy the first one more, but just throwing that as an analogy, how people really enjoy that sequel. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is phenomenal. Like, in every sort of way. I love the side characters. I loved Puss in Boots' story in here, and I thought the humor was knitted throughout here perfectly. The action is so stylized and awesome. This is, again, one of those movies you can take the kids to and enjoy it, but the adults will also thoroughly enjoy, specifically if you grew up on the Shrek movies. And I think for me, when watching this movie, I was genuinely just in awe of how freaking awesome this movie was. And it was very close to my number 2. It was like this close to my number 2, but nostalgia does beat out certain things, and after rewatching the first 2 movies, that one of those, they had to lead up into there. And that's where it brings me to my number 2, and that is the first Shrek film. The first Shrek film, while maybe has a couple pacing issues in the middle, nostalgically, this movie is freaking hilarious. It has so many jokes that are way ahead of its time, as well as just jokes that still lead in today and make you laugh your ass off. I actually watched this movie, and I'm just like, wow. How great is this damn thing? It takes all the fairy tale ideas that you see in Disney movies and flips it on its head and completely changes it in a new dynamic. A great soundtrack, as well as a great villain. And for me, when this movie came out, I remember growing up mainly on Disney movies and watching this and being like, am I supposed to be watching this? Like, it feels so different. Genuinely love how the creators were able to do that with this and take all the ideas of what you've had before from the fairy tales and princesses that you've learned about from Disney movies and make it into its own way in the DreamWorks. I loved it. At my number 1, you probably guessed it at this point, it's Shrek 2. Shrek 2 is the best Shrek movie ever. I don't know if anything will ever change this. Genuinely, from nostalgia, this is the one that I watched the most alongside the third film. I just absolutely adored this one. It was our introduction to Puss in Boots. There was more dynamic introduced to Shrek and Fiona, and of course Donkey added into there, and you just have this phenomenal finale when you're trying to catch up because they've switched bodies, they look human now, and then he's trying to stop Prince Charming from marrying Princess Fiona and stealing that kiss away from him and solidifying his future forever. And for me, within Shrek 2, you watch every avenue of this movie, and it's got everything. It's got action, it's got great themes, it's got great humor throughout it, and it expands the world of Shrek into a newer and bigger dynamic than you could ever singly imagine. Like, the first movie was a great little thing. The second movie grows and still remains on a simplified story, but continues to explore all the other lands of Far, Far Away, and, you know, Gingy, and Pinocchio, and the Muffin Man, and certain things in there, and it's great to see how they're able to add to all those avenues and really further out these characters in a great way. I love Shrek 2, and it is easily my favorite Shrek film of them all, but I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section, so make sure to leave your thoughts down below, hit that like and subscribe button. What is your favorite Shrek movie? Let's discuss it. it. And of course, are you seeing Puss in Boots: The Last Wish this week? I have a full review up on the channel. You can check it up in that end card scene. But of course, until next time, stay classy.